The quantum signal arrived on a quiet Tuesday morning, piercing through layers of Earth's most sophisticated detection systems like they weren't even there. Dr. Sarah Chen stood frozen at her workstation in the quantum communications array, her coffee cup suspended halfway to her lips as she stared at the readings flooding her holographic display. "This can't be right," she muttered, fingers flying across the interface. The signal wasn't just powerful, it was impossibly complex, carrying more information in a single pulse than most quantum transmissions could manage in an hour, and it was coming from somewhere far beyond the edges of known space. The message itself was simple, despite its sophisticated delivery method. "To any who can hear us, the Concordiad is falling. The Void Hunters have breached our last defenses. We require immediate assistance. Attached are our coordinates and technical specifications of the enemy. If you receive this, please help. We are the last line of defense." Within hours, the highest levels of Earth's United Defense Council were gathered in the underground chambers of New Geneva. The room hummed with tension as Admiral James Rodriguez, his dark eyes sharp beneath silver-streaked hair, addressed the assembly. "Ladies and gentlemen, what we're looking at is unprecedented," he began, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "The Concordiad, a federation of over 3,000 civilizations, is on the brink of collapse." Their message included detailed scans of the enemy forces, and frankly, the technology we're seeing shouldn't even be possible. The holographic display in the center of the room shifted, showing massive structures that seemed to bend reality around them. Ships that could swallow entire cities whole, weapons that could tear apart the fabric of space itself. "But here's what's interesting," Rodriguez continued, a hint of steel entering his voice. "These Void Hunters, for all their advanced technology, have one critical weakness. They've never encountered a species like us." The room stirred. Everyone knew what he meant. Humanity had evolved on Earth, a death world by galactic standards. High gravity, extreme temperature variations, constant natural disasters, and an ecosystem that had forced them to become the ultimate survivors. Every human was the product of millions of years of evolution in one of the most challenging environments in known space. Dr. Chen, who had been invited to the meeting as the signal's discoverer, spoke up. "The technical data they sent shows that the Void Hunters rely heavily on precision strikes and overwhelming force. They've never had to adapt to chaos, never had to think on their feet. They've never faced an enemy that thrives on unpredictability." "Exactly," Rodriguez nodded. "We've spent our entire history fighting, adapting, and surviving against impossible odds. Our ships are designed to take punishment that would destroy most vessels. Our crews are trained to function in conditions that would break most species. We're literally built for this." The council chamber erupted in discussion, but everyone could feel it. The electric tension of a species that had spent its entire existence preparing for a moment like this, even if they hadn't known it. Colonel Maya Patel, commander of the 1st Adaptive Strike Force, stepped forward. Her scared face bore witness to countless battles, both on Earth and in humanity's early ventures into space. "The real question is simple. Do we intervene? This isn't our fight. The Concordiad never reached out to us before. We don't owe them anything." Admiral Rodriguez's response was immediate. "No, we don't. But that's not why we do this. We do it because we can. Because we're possibly the only species in the galaxy capable of stopping these Void Hunters. Because if we don't, and they finish consuming the Concordiad, how long until they find Earth?" The room fell silent. On the massive screens surrounding them, data continued to stream in from the quantum signal. Maps of devastated star systems, specifications of weapons that defied conventional physics, and beneath it all, the desperate plea of a civilization on the brink of extinction. Dr. Chen studied the technical readouts with growing excitement. Their quantum communication technology alone is decades ahead of ours, but their combat doctrine is rigid, predictable. They've never had to evolve beyond their initial strategies because they've never needed to. Until now. The United Defense Council's deliberation lasted less than an hour. In the end, the vote was unanimous. Humanity would answer the call. Admiral Rodriguez stood at the center of the chamber, his voice carrying the weight of history. Initialize Operation Thunderfall. I want every battle-ready ship prepped for immediate departure. We launch in 24 hours. As the council chamber emptied, Dr. Chen found herself standing next to Colonel Patel, both women watching the holographic display of the enemy fleet. You know, Patel said quietly, the Concordia probably thinks they're calling for a savior. Instead, they're about to meet humanity. Chen smiled, a fierce expression that would have surprised her colleagues at the Quantum Lab. Maybe that's exactly what they need. A species crazy enough to punch back against the impossible. Throughout the next 24 hours, Earth's orbital shipyards blazed with activity. Warships that had been designed to weather the worst space could throw at them were brought to full combat readiness. Crews that had trained in conditions that would kill most alien species prepared for battle. They were humanity's finest, the children of Earth, forged in the crucible of one of the galaxy's most challenging worlds. And they were about to show the universe exactly what that meant. The void between stars echoed with the quantum wake of 300 human warships tearing through spacetime. At the head of the fleet, the HSS Hyperion cut through the darkness like a blade, its adaptive armor gleaming under the light of distant stars. On its bridge, Admiral Rodriguez stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching as his crew prepared for their first major space engagement. Quantum jump complete in 3 minutes, announced Lieutenant Kira Santos, her fingers dancing across the navigation console. The young officer had grown up in the high-gravity colonies of Titan, her body naturally adapted to forces that would crush most alien species. Colonel Patel's voice crackled through the command channel from her ship, the HSS Stormbreaker. All strike teams report ready. Admiral, we've run the combat simulations against the Void Hunters' known tactics. Our adaptive AI suggests they've never encountered anything like our battle strategies. They wouldn't have. Dr. Chen interjected from her station, where she'd been analyzing the enemy's technical data. She'd insisted on joining the mission, arguing that her expertise in quantum physics might prove crucial. Their entire civilization is built on predictability and overwhelming force. They've never needed to adapt. The fleet's quantum drives hummed as they prepared to emerge from their faster-than-light corridor. Unlike the rigid, energy-intensive drives used by most galactic civilizations, human quantum drives were designed to be inherently unstable, capable of making micro-adjustments mid-jump that made them nearly impossible to intercept. Emergence in 30 seconds, Santos announced, sensors detecting massive energy signatures ahead. Rodriguez nodded grimly. All ships, battle formation Delta. Remember your training. We're not here to fight fair. We're here to win. The fleet burst into normal space like a swarm of angry wasps, immediately breaking into seemingly chaotic patterns that had been refined through centuries of naval warfare. Ahead of them, the Void Hunters' fleet hung in space like a collection of dark stars. Massive vessels that seemed to absorb light itself. By all that's holy, Chen whispered, staring at her readings. They're ships. They're not just big, they're breaking physics. They're creating localized zones where natural laws just stop working. That's why conventional forces can't fight them. Patel's voice was tight with concentration. But we're not conventional, are we? The human fleet's response was immediate and devastating. Instead of forming up into traditional battle lines, they scattered in what appeared to be complete disarray. To the Void Hunters, it must have looked like panic until the trap was sprung. Launch the SOS protocols, Rodriguez ordered, a fierce grin spreading across his face. From every human ship, swarms of quantum-enhanced drones burst forth. Unlike traditional weapons, these were powered by controlled entropy, technology developed from humanity's understanding of Earth's most destructive natural phenomena. Where the Void Hunters created zones of altered physics, the human weapons thrived on uncertainty and disorder. The first wave of drones struck the enemy fleet's outer defenses, and the results were spectacular. Where the Void Hunters' reality warping fields should have destroyed them, the drones instead absorbed the chaos. Growing stronger, they wormed their way through the enemy's perfect formations, introducing tiny flaws that quickly cascaded into major vulnerabilities. "It's working," Chen exclaimed, her eyes wide as she watched the data streams. Their systems can't handle true randomness. Every time they try to compensate, they're actually making themselves more vulnerable. The Void Hunters' response was immediate and devastating, or it would have been, against any other enemy. Massive energy beams capable of cutting planets in half lanced out toward the human fleet. But human ships didn't dodge like normal vessels. Instead, they leaned into the attacks, their adaptive armor redistributing the energy in ways that defied conventional physics. "All ships, execute Maneuver Thunderstorm," Rodriguez commanded. It was a tactic that would have been suicide for any other species, deliberately flying into the enemy's weapons fire to get close enough for point-blank engagement. The human fleet moved like a school of fish, each ship anticipating and complementing the other's movements in patterns too complex for any AI to predict. They'd learned these techniques from studying Earth's predators, from the way wolves hunted in packs to how orcas coordinated their attacks. Colonel Patel's voice cut through the chaos. "Sir, we're detecting power fluctuations in their flagship. Our chaos fields are affecting their reality warping technology more than we anticipated." "Press the advantage," Rodriguez ordered. "All ships, concentrate fire on their command and control nodes. Let's show them what happens when they pick a fight with Deathworlders." The battle continued to unfold like a deadly dance, with human ships darting through gaps in the enemy's formation that shouldn't have existed. Every time the Void Hunters adjusted their tactics, the human fleet was already 3 steps ahead, exploiting weaknesses that appeared for mere seconds. "Admiral," Chen called out, her voice tight with excitement, "I'm detecting quantum fluctuations in their main fleet. Their reality warping fields are becoming unstable. If we can push them just a little harder." Rodriguez nodded. "All ships, initiate Operation Stormbreaker." "Colonel Patel, you have tactical command of the strike force." The HSS Stormbreaker and its escort of smaller vessels broke from the main fleet, accelerating toward the heart of the enemy formation. They moved in patterns learned from studying lightning storms on Jupiter, unpredictable yet perfectly coordinated. As the battle reached its crescendo, it became clear that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology or their tactics. It was their fundamental nature as creatures forged in the crucible of a death world. Every human in the fleet had grown up knowing that survival meant adaptation. That victory often meant embracing chaos rather than fighting it. The Void Hunters were about to learn why you should never corner a species that had evolved to thrive in adversity. The HSS Stormbreaker shuddered as another reality warping blast grazed its hull. Colonel Patel gripped her command chair, watching as her strike force penetrated deeper into the heart of the Void Hunters' formation. Around them, space itself writhed and twisted, distorted by the clash between human chaos fields and the enemy's physics-defying technology. "Status report," she demanded, her voice steady despite the gravitational forces threatening to tear their ships apart. "Hull integrity at 60%, her tactical officer reported. "Chaos field generators are running hot, but they're holding. The enemy's trying to box us in." Through the quantum-linked command network, Dr. Chen's voice cut in from the Hyperion. "Colonel, we're detecting something strange. The Void Hunters aren't just bending space anymore. They're trying to create some kind of temporal distortion." "They're getting desperate," Rodriguez added from the flagship. "They've never faced an enemy they couldn't overwhelm with pure force. Keep pushing. Make them react to us." The battle had evolved beyond anything in human military history. The Void Hunters' massive ships moved with impossible grace, their weapons capable of erasing matter from existence. But humanity's fleet responded with controlled fury, using techniques learned from Earth's most devastating natural phenomena. "Launch Thunder Seeds," Paddle ordered. The Stormbreaker released a cloud of specialized drones, each one containing a miniature quantum storm. technology derived from studying the heart of Earth's hurricanes. The devices scattered among the enemy ships, creating zones of pure chaos that disrupted the Void Hunters' reality warping fields. On the Hyperion, Dr. Chen's eyes widened as she studied the sensor readings. This is incredible. Their ships, they're not just machines. They're trying to reshape the fundamental laws of physics around themselves. But every time they do, our chaos fields force them to adapt in ways they were never designed for. Lieutenant Santos, monitoring the quantum wake patterns, suddenly straightened in her chair. Multiple signatures detected. They're bringing in reinforcements. The void lit up as more Void Hunter vessels emerged from quantum space, their massive forms blotting out the stars. But instead of panic, a grim satisfaction spread through the human fleet. Every ship they drew into battle was another ship that couldn't threaten the Concordia's surviving worlds. All ships, execute Protocol Omega, Rodriguez commanded. Colonel Patel, Dr. Chen, it's time to test your theory. The human fleet's formation shifted again, but this time it wasn't random. They moved in patterns based on the mathematical principles Chen had discovered while studying the quantum signal, patterns that created resonance with the Void Hunters' reality warping fields. Sir, Chen's voice was tense with excitement. If we can force them to keep adapting their fields, to keep changing the laws of physics around their ships, they'll burn out their own systems, Patel finished. Like forcing an engine to run at maximum power until it destroys itself. The battle reached a new level of intensity. The Void Hunters, realizing the danger, launched an all-out assault. Space itself seemed to burn as their weapons fire intensified, creating corridors of altered reality that would have instantly destroyed any conventional fleet. But humanity's ships weren't conventional. The crews, descendants of Earth's survivors, had inherited millions of years of evolutionary adaptations. Their ships, designed by engineers who had grown up watching their world's most violent storms, were built to thrive in chaos. Multiple hits on Deck 3. Patel's tactical officer shouted as the Stormbreaker took another devastating blow. We're losing structural integrity. Reroute power from life support if you have to, Patel ordered. Keep those chaos fields running. The sacrifice was immediate and brutal. Throughout the human fleet, crews worked in deteriorating conditions as their ships directed every scrap of power to their weapons and defensive systems. They fought with the desperate energy of a species that had evolved to survive in one of the galaxy's harshest environments. On the Hyperion's bridge, Rodriguez watched as the battle plan unfolded. The Void Hunters' perfectly ordered formations were breaking down, their attempts to maintain control over local space-time becoming increasingly erratic. But the cost was mounting. Already, several human ships had been lost, their crews fighting to the last second to maintain the chaos fields that were slowly but surely driving the enemy to destruction. Admiral. Chen's voice was hoarse with emotion. I'm detecting quantum cascade failures throughout their fleet. The reality warping, it's beginning to collapse in on itself. All ships push forward, Rodriguez commanded. Don't let them stabilize their fields. The human fleet surged forward like predators scenting blood. Their chaos fields, now operating at maximum intensity, created a web of unpredictability that the Void Hunters couldn't adapt to fast enough. Ships that had seemed invincible began to break apart as their own reality-altering technology turned against them. But victory would come at a terrible price. The Stormbreaker's engines were beginning to fail, its hull barely holding together after repeated reality-warping impacts. Colonel Patel, her bridge filled with the smoke of burning circuits, knew they had one final card to play. Admiral, she called out, her voice steady despite the destruction around her. Request permission to initiate terminal protocol. There was a moment of heavy silence on the command channel. Everyone knew what terminal protocol meant. A last resort tactic that would almost certainly mean the loss of the ship and its crew. Permission granted, Rodriguez replied softly. Give them hell, Maya. The Stormbreaker's engines flared one last time as it drove straight toward the heart of the enemy fleet, its chaos fields building to impossible levels. They would show the Void Hunters that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their tactics. It was their willingness to sacrifice everything to protect not just their own species, but any civilization that needed their help. The HSS Stormbreaker's final charge became a beacon of defiance against the Void. Colonel Maya Patel stood at her command station, watching as emergency lights bathed her bridge in crimson. Around her, her crew worked with the precision of people who had accepted their fate but refused to go quietly. "Divert all power to the chaos field generators," she ordered. "Every scrap of energy you can find. Life support, artificial gravity, everything." The ship groaned as its systems were pushed beyond their limits. In the engine room, engineers fought to contain cascading reactor breaches, their bodies struggling against the failing artificial gravity. The Stormbreaker had been built to survive almost anything. But what they were attempting now went beyond mere survival. Through the quantum network, Dr. Chen's voice was filled with urgency. "Colonel, the readings from your ship, the chaos field you're generating is reaching theoretical limits. If you push it any further." "That's exactly what we're counting on," Paddle responded, her eyes fixed on the massive Void Hunter flagship ahead. "Their whole technology is based on controlling reality. Let's show them what happens when reality itself rebels." Admiral Rodriguez's voice cut through the channel. "Maya, you don't have to do this. We can find another way." "With all due respect, sir, we both know there isn't time." The enemy fleet was already regrouping, their reality warping fields beginning to stabilize. Sometimes the only way to beat impossible odds is to do something equally impossible. On the Hyperion, Dr. Chen's hands flew across her console as she analyzed the data streaming from the Stormbreaker. The energy readings, they're creating something I've never seen before. The chaos field isn't just disrupting the enemy's reality warping anymore. It's creating its own localized laws of physics. The Void Hunters seemed to sense the danger. Their flagship, a behemoth that dwarfed even the largest human vessels, began to turn its main weapons toward the approaching Stormbreaker. Space itself writhed around it as it prepared to fire. "All hands," Paddle's voice echoed through her ship's corridors. "It has been an honor serving with you. For Earth, for the Concordiate, and for every species that has ever faced extinction at the hands of those who think might makes right, we make our stand." The Stormbreaker's engines burned with the fury of a dying star as it accelerated toward its target. The ship's chaos field, pushed beyond all safe limits, began to interact with the Void Hunter's reality warping technology in ways that defied comprehension. On the Hyperion's bridge, Dr. Chen suddenly straightened in her chair. "Admiral, I'm detecting quantum signatures I've never seen before. The interaction between our chaos field and their reality warping, it's creating some kind of cascade effect." "Explain," Rodriguez demanded, watching as the Stormbreaker closed the distance to the enemy flagship. "Their technology works by imposing order on reality, by forcing space-time to behave according to their rules." Chen spoke rapidly, her words tumbling over each other. "But the chaos field, it's not just disrupting their control, it's introducing true randomness into their systems. And in doing so, it's revealing something about their nature." The Void Hunter's flagship fired, its weapon capable of erasing entire ships from existence. But the Stormbreaker, wrapped in its envelope of pure chaos, didn't try to evade. Instead, it plowed straight through the beam, its hull screaming as forces beyond human comprehension tried to tear it apart. "They're not just aliens." Chen's voice was filled with wonder and horror. "They're living equations, beings of pure mathematics trying to impose their version of order on our universe. And we just introduced a variable they can't solve for." The revelation hit the command staff like a physical blow. The Void Hunters weren't just another spacefaring race. They were something far more alien, far more fundamental to reality itself. And humanity, in their desperate bid for survival, had stumbled upon their one true weakness. "All ships," Rodriguez's voice carried across the quantum network, Focus your chaos fields on the coordinates Dr. Chen is transmitting. We need to support the Stormbreaker's attack. The human fleet responded instantly, their remaining ships generating chaos fields that resonated with the Stormbreakers. The combined effect created a web of pure randomness that began to eat away at the very fabric of space-time around the Void Hunter's flagship. On the Stormbreaker's bridge, Colonel Patel allowed herself a grim smile as her ship crossed the point of no return. The chaos field had grown so intense that reality itself seemed to blur around them. Warning sirens blared as systems throughout the ship began to fail catastrophically. Chaos field at maximum, her engineering chief shouted over the din. Containment's failing. We've got maybe 30 seconds. That's all we need, Paddle responded, her voice calm despite the destruction around her. Prepare to initiate terminal protocol on my mark. The Void Hunter's flagship loomed before them, its reality warping field visibly distorting as it tried to maintain control over local spacetime. But for the first time in their ancient history, the beings of pure mathematics were facing an equation they couldn't solve, the fundamental unpredictability of human nature itself. Now, Patil commanded, and the Stormbreaker's chaos field generators overloaded in a carefully calculated sequence. The resulting quantum cascade would either tear a hole in reality itself or prove humanity's wildest theories about the nature of spacetime. As the Stormbreaker made its final approach, the rest of the human fleet watched in awe as physics itself seemed to break down around the point of impact. They were about to learn whether humanity's greatest gambit would save the galaxy or tear it apart. In the moment of impact, reality itself seemed to hold its breath. The HSS Stormbreaker, wreathed in quantum fire and carrying the hopes of two civilizations, struck the Void Hunter's flagship like a bullet of pure chaos striking an ordered crystal. The resulting explosion wasn't just a release of energy, it was a fundamental rewriting of local spacetime itself. Dr. Chen's voice cracked through the quantum network, filled with both awe and terror. The chaos field. It's not just disrupting their reality warping anymore. It's creating a cascading effect through their entire fleet. Their mathematical nature is working against them. From the bridge of the Hyperion, Admiral Rodriguez watched as the laws of physics broke down around the point of impact. The Void Hunter's flagship, that massive construct of impossible geometry and mathematical precision, began to fold in on itself as its perfectly ordered systems encountered something they were never designed to handle: true, fundamental randomness. All ships, fall back to safe distance, Rodriguez ordered, but his eyes never left the tactical display showing the Stormbreaker's final moments. Maya, if you can hear us. Through static and quantum interference, Colonel Patel's voice came through one last time. Don't waste this, Admiral. Show them why you never corner a species that evolved to thrive in chaos. The explosion that followed defied description. Where the Stormbreaker had struck, reality itself seemed to rupture. The Void Hunter's flagship, along with a significant portion of their fleet, was caught in a quantum cascade failure that spread like wildfire through their mathematically perfect formations. It's beautiful, Chen whispered, watching her readings. Their entire existence is based on mathematical certainty, on being able to predict and control every variable. But the chaos field introduced true randomness into their equations. It's like introducing division by zero into a perfect formula. The effect spread through the Void Hunter's fleet like a virus. Ships that had seemed invincible began to break apart as their reality warping fields collapsed, unable to maintain coherence in the face of true unpredictability. The beings of pure mathematics that controlled them found themselves facing something they had never encountered in all their eons of existence, an enemy that turned their greatest strength into their ultimate weakness. Multiple quantum signatures collapsing. Lieutenant Santos reported from her station. The enemy fleet, they're not just being destroyed, they're being unmade. The human fleet regrouped, their remaining ships forming a defensive perimeter around the zone of quantum devastation. They had won, but the cost had been enormous. The Stormbreaker and its crew had sacrificed themselves to prove that even the most fundamental forces of the universe could be overcome by human determination and ingenuity. As the quantum storms began to settle, something unexpected happened. From the wreckage of the Void Hunters' fleet, new signals began to emerge. Dr. Chen's eyes widened as she decoded them. "Admiral, these signals, they're coming from the Void Hunters themselves. But they're different now. The mathematical patterns, they're evolving, changing, becoming something new." Rodriguez leaned forward. "Explain." "The chaos field didn't just destroy their perfect order," Chen said, her voice filled with wonder. "It forced them to adapt, to incorporate randomness into their own nature. They're learning to exist in a universe that isn't perfectly predictable." Through the quantum network, messages began to arrive from the surviving Void Hunters. No longer were they the implacable forces of mathematical certainty that had threatened to consume the galaxy. The introduction of chaos, of humanity's fundamental unpredictability, had changed them on a basic level. "They're requesting communication," Santos announced, surprise evident in her voice. Rodriguez straightened his uniform. "Put them through." The message that came through was unlike anything they had expected. The Void Hunters, those beings of pure mathematics, had been transformed by their encounter with human chaos. They had discovered something they had never known in all their existence: the beauty of uncertainty, the power of adaptation, the strength that comes from embracing the unknown. Days later, as the human fleet prepared to return to Earth, representatives from the Concordiat arrived to witness the aftermath of the battle. What they found astonished them. Not just the defeat of their greatest enemy, but the birth of something entirely new. The Void Hunters, forever changed by their encounter with humanity, had begun to explore a new way of existing, one that balanced order with chaos, certainty with possibility. Dr. Chen, working with both Concordiat scientists and the transformed Void Hunters, helped establish the foundations of a new understanding of reality itself. The beings that had once sought to impose perfect order on the universe now worked to explore the power of controlled chaos, guided by the species that had evolved in one of the galaxy's harshest environments. In the years that followed, humanity's role in the galaxy would be forever changed. They were no longer just the inhabitants of a death world, no longer just survivors. They had become teachers, showing the galaxy's oldest civilizations that true strength comes not from imposing order on chaos, but from learning to thrive within it. And in the quantum networks that spanned the stars, the story would be told again and again. How a species that evolved on a planet that should have killed them had saved the galaxy not through overwhelming force or advanced technology, but through their fundamental nature as creatures of chaos and adaptation. The sacrifice of the Stormbreaker and its crew would be remembered not just as an act of heroism, but as the moment when humanity proved that the greatest power in the universe isn't the ability to control reality, but the courage to embrace its endless possibilities.